When you think of controversial games, you probably think of those that feature all sorts of sex and violence. The GTAs, the Mortal Kombats, the Postals and all that sort of thing. However, there is another one that I want to add to the conversation. Solitaire. You know, the card game that came free with every copy of Windows, at least until recently. You don't tend to think, or maybe you just don't remember, that Solitaire would be responsible for so many negative reports and column inches, but oh boy, there are some fun stories to be had here. Now it has to be said they're mostly American ones. Apologies to my viewers from over the pond, but you guys just seem to get a bit madder about Solitaire than anyone else. We've got high-profile sackings, we've got attempts to ban it, we've even got the first reported case of serious computer addiction. Now just how could a simple card game cause so much grief? I mean, it's only Solitaire. Well, let's find out. Okay, now first off, just to halt any pedantry, yes, Microsoft Solitaire isn't Solitaire. There is no actual card game called Solitaire. It's just a name used for various solo card games. Microsoft Solitaire is a game called Klondike. Now that that's out of the way, let's dig. Wes Cherry, the lowly summer intern who wrote the first version of Microsoft Solitaire in 1989, the one that came on Windows 3.0, was one of the few people who saw the frightening potential of the program. Most simply saw Solitaire as a training tool, a way to introduce people to the brave new world of Windows with a simple game that would, through playing it, get them used to the mouse-based controls in the full operating system. When you play Solitaire, you also learn concepts like, say, drag and drop and simple multitasking. But Wes knew the game was highly addictive. Perhaps he couldn't stop playing his own creation. Maybe he was the first Solitaire addict. At first he included a boss key in the game, a button you could quickly press to instantly bring up some sort of facsimile of a spreadsheet or other, which would make it look as though you were busy at work to the roving eye of your boss. However, Microsoft demanded that the boss key be taken out before the release of Windows 3.0. Wes Cherry, by the way, has never received a penny of royalties for his work on Microsoft Solitaire, which is kind of a bummer, all things considered. Solitaire quickly went far beyond being just a training tool. It became a way of life in offices around the world. One famous estimate in the 90s placed Solitaire amongst the top 3 used Windows programs, ahead of the more productive likes of Word and Excel. There were a lot of private companies that saw this as a problem early on and got rid of it sharpish. Big companies like, say, Coke or Boeing. One unnamed travel company executive in 1993 said that letting employees play games on office computers was unthinkable, and he unwittingly predicted YouTube by saying that if you did that, then you may as well shove some TVs in there too so they could watch the Beverly Hillbillies. Even PC Magazine, a publication ostensibly run by people who were perhaps a bit more savvy and could do way more with a computer than just play cards, was not immune. This magazine, responsible for reviewing all things hardware and software on your personal computer, banned the playing of Solitaire and other games during office hours. But some folks, on a higher level, well, they went beyond even that. Private companies can obviously do what they want when it comes to getting rid of things like Solitaire, and no one's really going to bat an eyelid. But what about the government and federal workers? If you're some senator or whatever and you're pissed off about your worker ants playing stupid card games on your time, then you can't just get rid of Solitaire with a hastily written memo. You have to try and make it law. And yeah, people did try to make it law. The most high-profile case of a senator trying to get Solitaire banned came in 1997 thanks to Lorch Fairclough, a North Carolina Republican who will forever be known as the man who started the war on Solitaire. Fairclough raged wildly at the scourge of Solitaire, saying that it's not what the computers were bought for, and naturally invoking the American taxpayer, whose hard-earned money was being spent on people screwing around and playing these damn card games. He stuck amendments on Treasury bills that, if passed, would see Solitaire and other games, Free Cell, Hearts, Minesweeper and other assorted time wasters, banned from all federal computers. Some departments, like the EPA and the Labour Department, had already done it. He himself had already banned it from his office. So hey, why not extend it to the whole damn lot? Get rid of this cursed productivity vacuum once and for all. In 1997, such a bill, essentially a mandate to get workers off of that damn Nintendo, was treated soberly in the press, with worries about Big Brother and so on. If Solitaire gets banned, then, well, what next? The internet as a whole? Fairclough was obsessed over this. A 1993 study he happened to read showed that these games were eaten into 5.1 hours of precious work time every week. Generally, people's understanding was low. There were even some articles back then that wondered if the amount of money that computers saved for a business was actually offset completely by the amount of time workers spent playing Solitaire, if you can believe that. Fairclough also wanted to get rid of things like voicemail on people's phones too. God help you if you weren't in the office to answer any calls that might happen to come in. You may as well chain you to your desk. He was perhaps a bit full on. Others who were against the bill argued using new studies that were coming in, showing that actually games like Solitaire were beneficial for workers. After all, what's the difference between 10 minutes spent playing a couple of hands of Solitaire and 10 minutes spent going outside for a cigarette or chatting at a water cooler? If anything, someone playing a Solitaire is still at their desk, ready to take a call or whatever. They're not completely out of the office, nor are they stopping someone else from doing work. So what's the big deal? But someone like Fairclough wasn't going to be convinced by such things. He only saw the time and money that was apparently being lost through these cursed games. Ironically enough, money is what killed the bill in the end. It passed through the Senate but died in the House because the cost of removing Solitaire and other games from literally every federal computer in the country was deemed far too great. Lodge Fairclough lost his Great War. Fast forward about 10 years to the other attempt at killing Solitaire. In that time, the US understanding of Solitaire's positives was enriched thanks to a pro-Solitaire president. George W. Bush spent a fair chunk of time playing Freecell while he was governor of Texas, often using his progress on a game to signify his lack of interest in a conversation. Now, you might not be surprised by that. Not that this meant anything to another North Carolina senator, Austin Olwan, who, like his predecessor, was utterly vexed by the ubiquity of Solitaire. He believed that the American taxpayer, yep, that guy again, would be outraged, not miffed or nonplussed, but outraged at the amount of time that the work-shy bastard drones in his office were spending dragging cards around a screen. Again, millions would be saved if we just got rid of it. And so, in 2005, he tried to do just that. The reaction to Olwan's screed against computer cards was perhaps a bit more incredulous in 2005 than it had been previously. Some sarcastically applauded Olwan for clearly having sorted out every other problem in his state if he himself could spend so much time railing against the evils of Solitaire in the workplace. Others used Olwan's campaign as a metaphor for a bigger struggle between traditional corporate culture and new technology as represented by the IT professional. That always-on culture reacted against the IT guy in various ways. Anything from banning Solitaire to restricting internet, mobile phone, and even email usage. On one hand, you have people who say that allowing workers at least a modicum of time to engage in personal activities on the computer allows them to retain some identity at work, to take a little break from what they're doing and then come back more engaged and more productive. On the other hand, you have people who only see the bottom line and simply think that time spent playing Solitaire is time spent not working and not earning me money. And once again, Olwan's bill failed, for much the same reasons as the last one, because the actual task of removing these games from every federal computer would be monumental, incredibly expensive, and utterly fruitless, because, well, what's to stop people just downloading them again? Well, so much for duly elected representatives and their war against Solitaire. Clearly they're utterly perfect and spend 23 hours of every day in constant work mode, never once giving in to the joys of moving some cards around a screen. Or not, as the case may be. Here's a photograph that went viral in 2009. It shows some representative, a man named Larry Cafero, giving a speech. Not that your eyes are drawn to that. They're probably drawn to the rows of his fellow representatives who, while poor Larry is droning on about the budget, are busy on their laptops either surfing the internet or, yep, playing Solitaire. Suddenly the shoe is on the other foot. After years of representatives having a go at Solitaire, they're the ones who get caught. And not only the press, but social media duly obliged with a dogpile. The raging fires on social media were naturally fanned by exaggeration. If you saw this on Facebook, the post probably said that this picture was taken in Congress during a debate on a sensitive subject such as healthcare, and shows exactly how much these representatives cared about the people of the United States of America. Therefore, they should all be fired, jailed, and rebates handed out like candy to every one of the nation's taxpayers. The picture was actually taken in the Connecticut House of Representatives near the end of a lengthy 13-hour session, and Cafero was given a long speech about the state's budget. In the ensuing news coverage, Cafero, for his part, took a disappointed dad role. He himself wasn't angry, but he wondered if taxpayers would be disappointed to see their representatives playing solitaire whilst Rome is burning. Because hey, there's the added context of the credit crunch and global recession coming into play too. One of the solitaire players, a Democrat named Jack Hennessy, had this to say.
It was certainly bad judgment for me to play a computer game even for just a few minutes during the final House session on the budget. I am embarrassed, and I apologise to each and every person in the North End and to people across my state. My actions were inexcusable. I do want my constituents to know that my poor judgment for a few moments in no way means I ignored your interests in representing you on this very serious matter. I sincerely apologise to each of you. I look forward to having the continued privilege of representing you and your interests in Hartford. I thank you in advance for your understanding and have been humbled by those of you who have already expressed your understanding and forgiveness.
Geez, now that is a grovelling and serious apology. Just for playing solitaire? By the tone of this statement, anyone would think that old Jack here had been caught with his fingers in an intern. There's people nowadays who could really take notes on saying sorry from Jack Hennessy, the representative whose act of procrastination made international news. But still, it could be worse. Of course, anyone who's worked in an office will know that some people do actually spend too much time screwing around playing solitaire or whatever. They never seem to do any work, they make things harder for you, they may be nice and all, but when it comes to the workplace, they're basically useless individuals. You probably do know someone who, in the end, was told to clear their desk and get out because they did no work and spent all day dragging cards about or some other activity. That's not usually news. But in one case, it most certainly was. Quite big news, for a little while. And the guy in question wasn't even one of these useless people. He was simply a victim of bad luck. Meet Edward Greenwood IX. As of January 2006, he's an assistant in a governmental lobbying office in Albany, New York, earning about $27,000 a year. He's been there a good few years, he's got a family, and he's never done anything at work that would warrant a suspension, a warning, barely so much as a critique. Just an ordinary clerical worker. And this is his boss, Michael Bloomberg, the then mayor of New York City, CEO of the mass media company that bears his name, and one of the richest people in America. On January 4th, 2006, Michael Bloomberg pays a rare visit to the offices in Albany where Edward Greenwood works. Bloomberg is, of course, a very high-profile figure. One might speculate that perhaps our buddy Edward was a bit starstruck. And so he asks Mayor Bloomberg if they can have a picture together, which he duly agrees to. And while this is happening, Bloomberg just so happens to take a glance over at Edward Greenwood's computer screen. And what does he see? Just a couple of weeks later, on January 30th, Edward Greenwood IX was fired from his job. Initially he was told that he was being let go because of office downsizing and restructuring, but this was bullshit. After his case was reported in the New York Post, it became clear that he was fired because Michael Bloomberg saw solitaire on his computer screen. He may have been smiling in the photo, but inside he was simmering with rage at this little ant, and duly got his magnifying glass out, ready to burn him alive at the first opportunity. Greenwood wondered why he wasn't just told not to play games, which according to him he wasn't even doing at the time as he'd been out of the office collecting tickets for a government event, instead of being flat out fired despite having no other black marks on his record. Bloomberg himself was unrepentant. He said that it wasn't appropriate to be playing games during office hours, and that the employee should have been doing the job he was paid to do. And yet, well, let's be logical. Would Greenwood have been fired if he'd asked Mayor Bloomberg for a picture outside while he was on a smoke break? Or if he'd asked after spending half an hour with someone at the coffee machine chatting about those lousy Knicks? course he wouldn't have been. Greenwood was obviously unhappy about the whole thing, although he did not take his dismissal any further. Most people were kind of sympathetic to him. I mean, here's the classic little guy, working hard at a job, and he gets canned because a guy who earns more in a minute simply through interest than he does in a whole year wants to make an example of him and grandstand about his own superior work ethic. Others simply said that Greenwood should have probably made use of the minimise button before leaving his desk. And what was the statement, in the end? Well, don't let Mayor Bloomberg see you playing solitaire, I guess. Because he's kind of a dick. But even this metaphorical sword of Damocles hanging over people's heads probably wouldn't have stopped all of them from sneaking in the odd game here and there when the boss isn't looking. Playing Microsoft Solitaire is a highly compulsive activity, and a satisfying one to boot. There's the painted sides of the cards with all their cute animations, the want to get a better score this time around, and the rush of endorphins that comes when you complete a game and watch all the cards fly around the screen. Everyone knows that. It's a perfect casual game, undoubtedly. And casual games can be pretty damn addictive. You may have thought that the first case of serious computer game addiction would probably come from the land of, say, MMORPGs. You know, the second jobs that people spend forever and a day on. But no. In fact, the first clinic that was designed to deal with computer addiction was set up by a woman who, by her own admission, was addicted to solitaire. Dr. Marissa Orzak got the bug while trying to learn how to use a new program through a mailing list. It seems as though she was having a bit of trouble with this new program, so rather than bash her computer screen in with a keyboard while her co-worker quizzically peered over the divider at her rage, she turned to solitaire. Get annoyed with the program? Play a few hands of solitaire, then come back. Before long, however, she was using the computer more for solitaire than she was for actual work, constantly trying to beat her scores. She started missing deadlines, falling asleep at the computer, all sorts. It didn't take her too long to recognise that she was addicted to solitaire. She was, after all, a clinical psychologist who had spent most of her career dealing with impulsive behaviours and treating various forms of addiction. Isn't that just ironic? Marissa Orzak set up her computer addiction clinic in 1996, and it grew pretty quickly from there. Over the years it expanded further, covering internet addiction, gaming addiction, and ultimately MMO addiction, comparing and linking them to other addictions such as gambling or alcohol. She once estimated, somewhat unscientifically perhaps, that 40% of the people who were playing World of Warcraft were addicted to it, and that the game should carry a public health warning, a la cigarettes. Sometimes her comments would naturally come in for a bit of a grilling in the gaming press, as you can imagine, although I am curious as to what she would have thought of today's gaming world with all of its microtransactions and loot crates and what have you. Alas, she died in 2010. But it is amusing to think that a whole chunk of research into just how addictive computers and gaming can be, something that changed the path of a whole career, all came back to a simple little card game. How could it possibly be so powerful? Back in the mid-2000s, many people thought that it would simply be there forever. After all, even those people who'd never played another game in their life, maybe even those who utterly scoffed at those nerds playing that Nintendo, chances are they were probably playing a few hands on the side. More than a few, maybe. Even when we were all gone, solitaire would still continue. But, of course, solitaire, at least in this form, didn't last forever. And it's almost like we've forgotten about it, relatively speaking. After being included in every single release of Windows from 3.0 on, Windows 8 did not include solitaire as standard. Or FreeCell, or Hearts, or Spider. Just like that, they were gone. Windows 10 did include the Microsoft Solitaire collection, but it's a premium product that you have to pay to use without loads of ads popping up. So, what happened? How did Solitaire, once quite possibly the single most used computer program in the whole world, die out? Well, as far as the original aim of the program goes, something that could subtly teach people the basics of using an operating system, well, everyone knows how to do that now. Computers are so ubiquitous that pretty much anybody can handle these basics. But as far as its compulsive, even addictive qualities go, well, it's kind of our fault. We stopped using it. Solitaire didn't so much die as it was made obsolete. Just look at the world we live in now. We have all different kinds of social media, mobile phones that are basically a laptop in your pocket, sites like YouTube, online games, games on your phone. There's so much out there. The average worker nowadays is absolutely spoiled for choice when it comes to options for dicking around at work and not getting things done. Hell, the chances are pretty good that you're watching this video at work right now, putting something off by doing so. Somewhere along the way, Solitaire just lost its seat at the table. The simple card game couldn't match up to this wonderful new world of technology. And all the arguments, well, they haven't exactly gone away. The angered bosses, the people being fired, others playing too damn much. It's basically all still around, but you just replace Solitaire with Facebook or YouTube or Instagram or Candy Crush or whatever. Things haven't actually changed all that much. So, remember that the next time your annoying co-worker shares something about how these bloody millennial kids today use social media too much and don't get anything done. Chances are pretty good the same person was once spending all of their time slacking off on the computer playing bloody cards. Bye for now. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then please do have a look at my social media, like it, subscribe it, all the good YouTube things, and also if you really wanna, maybe have a look at my Patreon, because you could join the community like these folks here have done. Alexa Jones-Gonzalez, Andrew Dalton, Andy Capt, Asobi Kwan DX, Chris Cox, Chris Pode, Conrad Pritchard, D. Zaliel Rimwan Suter, Daniel Briggs, Dave Cork, David Rose, Dustin Cooper, Freakish Uproar, Gary Samaden, Geordie Alex, James Brown, Jason Stevens, Jace Alexander, Jeff Ladd, Lee Norris, Lucas Kaligowski, Matthias Gramzo, Martin Pataki, Nicholas Tristan, Nikki and Bunty, Potter Margel, Ren Bimon, Are You OK 2000, Samir Alamar, Seth Robinson, Simon Gulliver, Tim Wald, Yoga Operator, Zach Roach, and to all the rest of the community, thank you and goodbye.